Hey guys, it's Christina. How's it going? Well, if you're looking for different ways to teach your students fluency, like how to pick up speed as they're reading, or how to make their reading a little bit smoother, how to add expression, work on phrasing, anything like that, this video is for you. I've really learned a lot of different techniques, and I actually tend to take this group a lot for the grade level and for the last few years because I've really liked it, and I feel like I've learned some different techniques to really help them out. So I wanted to share a few of those things with you guys today. So like I said, I'm hoping a lot of these things will be effective for you guys as well. It has been for me and my team. Me and another teacher on my team, we've actually both incorporated these things now, and we've seen a change in our test scores. And we've also been trying to share these techniques with other grade levels at the school. So I'm hoping it'll really help you guys as well. Okay, I remember when I had my first fluency group, I didn't really know what to do that would be like, I don't know, instructional every day, because they just read out loud and they practice. So I thought, what can I even do? So I remember going on to Pinterest to find stuff, and I found some things, but it wasn't really the best. And I was just kind of lost. So little by little, I found some resources and some really great things to help me put together like some really great lessons and strategies. Okay, so one day when I was scrolling through Pinterest, I found this little pin right here for Fluency Bootcamp. And so I thought, okay, that looks pretty cool. And I actually saved it in my pins. So if you want to go through some of my pins I have saved, I do have my Pinterest link below also. But anyway, when you do click on this pin, it'll take you to her blog. And basically it's called Ms. Jordan Reads, and there's a lot of really great resources there. And basically I followed a lot of the stuff she talks about in her boot camp. So I'll do like pacing and phrasing and different things like that. So you'll definitely have to check out this blog. There's a lot of really great resources here and information. So and you basically go through all these different areas of fluency, and you work on each thing throughout the week. And so I thought, okay, that's a really great place to start. Okay, so first of all, she actually has a whole boot camp that you can buy on Teachers Pay Teachers. I know another colleague that has actually bought that as well, and she really liked it. For what I did personally though, is I kind of followed the topics she covered, and I kind of found some materials for myself. Okay, so basically I have 30 minutes a day for 3 days a week where I meet with this fluency group. You could even do 4 times a week or 5 times a week, but we just have the time for 3. So what I do is I start off with one of these topics I found in the boot camp. So one day I'll work on pacing with them. The second day I'll work with pacing again, because that's one area my students really need help with. And then the next day I'll move on to, let's see, what's next? Pacing. Okay, and the next one I just thought of is phrasing. And so it's less choppy. And then the next day I'll do expression, and I'll actually do that 2 days in a row. And then the last day is where we kind of go through all the skills and kind of put them all together. Okay, so when I work on pacing with them, the first thing I do, well, every day that they come in, I have 2 stories ready to go for them, like on a front and back page. Or you can even make like a little fluency booklet, and they could read from a different story every day. But the key is you want to have a different story with them each time that they do different things throughout the lesson, so that it's like a cold read where they're not like familiar with it. Okay, so the first 10 to 15 minutes, that's where I work on that area I'm working on for the day. So if it's pacing, the first day for pacing, what I will do is I will give them a story, and I'll also give them a graph. And I'll say, okay, I'm gonna time you each for 1 minute, and you're each gonna read out loud, and I kind of stagger them. So what I'll do is I'll say, go, 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 go. And then when they've all started, I'll start my timer for 1 minute. And they just work on their speed, and that is it. And then the first one is just a practice. Then the second one, they actually put in on a graph. So that way they can see every week their progress and how they're doing with their speed. I think a really, really important thing to do though, is you need to be really upfront with where they need to be. So they know what the expectations are, so they know where they need to be. So I'll say it right up front. I'll say, okay, at this point of the year, you need to have 130 words per minute. I'll even tell them, I'll say, okay, on your story, if you want, you can even mark where 130 words is, so that way you can try and get to that. So that way it's not like a surprise and they know what they're shooting for. Okay, the second day I do pacing, I'll also give them a story again, and I'll say, okay, today we're gonna do a cold read and a hot read, and I have them get a blue crayon and a red crayon. And I'll say, okay, your cold read will probably be slower than your hot read. And I'll just say, okay, again, the goal is 130 words per minute. You can mark it on your paper if you want. So I'll say, okay, let's begin with our cold read. And again, I'll stagger them and I'll be like, go, 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 go. And then the last one goes, I'll finally click my timer. And I do that pretty quick, by the way. And then they all just read out loud, and I listen to each of them as they read out loud. So, and hopefully they're at different points because I've kind of staggered them. So then once the timer beeps after 1 minute, I'll say, okay, that was your cold read. Now it's time to graph your cold read on this is the next graph for the next day. So they'll put their cold read on. And then I'll say, okay, how do we do? We'll talk about it a little bit. And I'll say, okay, did anybody reach 130? Okay, oh, you got 200? Okay, that's pretty good. Don't forget, we also don't want to read too fast too, because if you're reading too fast, it might be hard to understand what you're saying. So I'll say, okay, here we go for our second read. This is the hot read. Hopefully it's a little bit faster, especially if you're under 130. And I'll say, okay, ready, set, stagger them again, go. Then after they're done reading and the timer goes off again, they will graph their hot read with their red crayon. And then we'll look at it and we'll think, okay, did it go up? And I'll say most of the time it should go up, but of course things happen where it might, be a little slower or something, but, and then I'll say, okay, next time I'm hoping it'll go up a little bit more, and I'll say, there's some things you can try at home too. You could also try to read out loud at home and practice, and so, that's what I'll basically do for pace. Okay, so you can pretty much find a lot of different graphs, but I found this one I really liked on Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's by A Peach for the Teach. And it's free, and I really like it because you can put their cold and hot read on it. So that's what I use for that. Another graph I really like to use is this one by Hello Literacy, and it's the student fluency graphs. So that one is also free, so that's another one I use. That's the first one I use, and then the hot read, cold read is the second one that I tend to use. Okay, now for phrasing. The reason why I work on phrasing with them is I tell them it's important to read smoothly instead of reading something really choppy. So I'll say there should be certain places we're stopping to pause, or it should just sound smoother. So what I'll do is I'll give them a story, and I'll also give them a highlighter. And I'll say, okay guys, we are gonna go through, and I want you guys to just highlight any commas or any periods or punctuation, and let's just go through and do that really quick. So they each have their own stories and they're highlighting punctuation. Okay, once they finish highlighting their whole story, I'll say, okay, now it's time for us to practice. And we're going to try to read things, and we're only gonna pause at the commas, periods, question marks, stuff like that. So I'll say, okay, let's do this all together. So we'll start together, we'll read and pause at those places we pause. And at the end of a section, I'll say, okay, how did that sound? Did it sound like we read it pretty smoothly? And they'll say, yeah. And then, or I'll say, is there a place maybe we can pause to make it sound a little better? Because maybe it sounded like we went on for a long time without breathing. And so we'll find those places and maybe put a few little highlights. And so I'll say, okay, so right now we're actually putting highlights in, but when you read it, you should be reading it in a way where you're thinking of highlights being there. And so that way it's like smoother and less choppy. Okay, the next thing they really love to work on is expression. So what I'll do the next day is we will just do a reader's theater, and there's so many free ones on Teachers Pay Teachers. There's also really great ones you can pay for, of course, but what I'll do is we'll just split up the parts, and I'll say, okay guys, it's really important for us to read with expression. So if the character is scared, we need to sound like we're scared when we're reading it. Or if they sound like they're excited, sound excited. We don't want to read it like we're bored or anything like that, but we really want to get into it as we read it. So that's really good practice for them to read with expression, and they really love it. It's probably one of their favorite days. Okay, so like I said, there's a lot of really cool readers theaters on Teachers Pay Teachers, but there's this one that my students really love. It's called Cinder Really, and it's by Reader's Theater, Fast and Funny Fluency. I feel like they have quite a bit I actually really like. And this one is free. So yeah, that's a really great one. And then when you flip through, of course, you can find quite a few. Like I've done The Hare and the Tortoise. They really like that. But yeah, there's a lot of really good ones. Oh, This Little Piggy, they like that one. So yeah. Okay, the next day when I work on expression with them again is I'll print off some poems. Or what I would really love to do eventually is get some like different poem compilations. But so what I'll do is print off some poems. Sometimes I'll do tongue twisters, or I'll do like classic poems or poems that are like pretty funny or something. And I'll just say, okay, we are just gonna practice reading poetry, and I'll pair them up and I'll say, okay, you guys decide how you want to split it up. You can decide, okay, I'm reading a line, then you read a line, something like that, going back and forth, or one person can read a paragraph, the other person reads a paragraph. And I'll just say, okay, I'm just going to set the timer for 1 minute, and I want you guys just to go back and forth and see how you did. So I'll time it for 1 minute, and I'll stop the timer and say, okay, how did things go? And they'll say, oh, we really messed up a lot on the second line or something. And I'll say, okay, what's the word that we need to go over? And we'll go over it or whatever. So it's just like a different way for them to practice their fluency, because sometimes it rhymes, or like I said, it could be a tongue twister, and it's just like a way to kind of mix it up for them. Also, having them read poetry is a really great way to practice their expression. Okay, one thing I really love to do, especially for some of my students that I feel really need to hear how they sound, especially if it's kind of choppy or something, is I'll have them record themselves. And I'll tell them, I'll say, okay, I know for me, when I hear myself, you know, on a recording or something, I might be kind of critical of it, or I might like think I'm doing all these things wrong, but I'll say, we're gonna think about things you're doing well. I mean, of course we want to think about things you can improve, but I want you to notice the good stuff you're doing too. And so what I'll do is I'll give them a story, and I'll give them a page, and I'll say, okay, you are going to pull up video on your Chromebook, and you are just going to video yourself reading this whole story. And I'll say, okay, once you're done reading the whole story, I want you to listen to it. As you listen to it, you are going to write down something you did really well, and I also want you to write down something you could work on. And so they'll do that for the first read, and I'll say, okay, then you're gonna read it a second time, and the second time, hopefully it's gonna be a little bit better. So once you're done recording it, you're gonna tell me, okay, what did you do well on the second time, and what is something maybe you fixed or you still could improve on. So there's a few things you can have them do as they listen to their recordings, but I think it's effective for them to hear themselves so they can really hear like if they're reading smoothly or not, or how it's sounding from like, because I think sometimes we think it sounds a certain way, but when you actually hear it, it could be different. So, okay, so I pretty much just told you how I do like the lesson portion of my fluency groups, but now I want to tell you about how I do practice, which is for the second part of the lesson. Okay, so I do this practice for any day that I do pacing and expression, pretty much for everything except for the day I do the recording and the Reader's Theater. Other than that, I always do this every day, is like the second part of the lesson. So what I do is I pair them up, and I try to switch up the partners every day, and I'll say, okay, one of you is going to be the teacher, one's going to be the reader. And I'll say, okay, teacher, you're going to be listening to the reader as I time them for 1 minute. And reader, you're going to try to work on all the skills that we've been working on. Or all the skills we will work on. This is where you try to balance them all together. So you want to have speed, but you also want to have expression, and you don't want it to be choppy. You also want to make sure you're being accurate in your reading too. You don't want to make too many mistakes. So I'll say, okay, so we've got to try to get everything all balanced together. And the teacher will basically score them in 4 different areas. They're going to score them on their fluency, so if it's choppy or smooth, and also their speed. They're also going to score them in accuracy. And I'll tell them, okay, our end of the year goal for accuracy is 99%. So you want to either try to have no mistakes, or maybe just 1 mistake. 2 might be too many if you're reading too slow. So I'll say, we got to try to get all those words right if you can. And then the other thing we work on is expression, of course. And the 4th thing is retell. And I'll be right up front with retell. I'll say, okay, you guys need to say 3 details They need to be in order, and you need to give me detail to go with it. You can't just say, it's about a dog, a school, and a kid, the end. I'll just say, no, you gotta say more. And so I'll tell them right up front what I expect. And I'll say, teachers, remember, it is really hard to earn a 5 because they're gonna score them on a scale from 1 to 5. And I'll say, okay, 1's the lowest, 5's the highest. But remember, a 5 is very hard to get. So it's gotta be really good to get a 5. And the kids love it because they can have a chance to be the teacher, you know, and they'll know exactly what's expected of them too. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, space out, but you need to be pretty close to your partner so you can hear them. And I'll say, okay, ready, go. I'll time them for 1 minute, and the teacher will listen to the reader and they'll score them as they read, also as they retell. And I'll say, okay, when they're done, don't forget to tell them exactly how they did. Why did you give them each score? What could they work on for next time? Or what did they do well in? I'll say, tell them exactly how they did, you know, give them some detail. So anyway, I think it's really great for them to have that opportunity to score one of their peers and to see like how they're supposed to be scored. I think it's eye-opening for them, so they'll know how they're gonna be scored. So again, just having those upfront expectations with them, I think is really important. So, okay, for the last 5 minutes of the lesson, this is where we do like a little game or an activity, like with popcorn reading or choral reading. And I'll say, okay, today we're gonna see if all of us can read 130 words per minute all together. And I'll say we're each just gonna say 1 word though, and let's see if we can make it really smooth and see if we can make it fast too. And so that's pretty fun. We'll go around in a circle and do that. Or another idea is you can say, okay, this person's gonna read 1 sentence, the second person is gonna join them on the second sentence, the third person is gonna join them on the third. But there's a lot of little activities you can do with them just to make it fun and just kind of mix it up. Plus it's really good because they can hear each other read, and also you as the teacher, you can join in and read with them too. Okay guys, well that's how I've been doing my fluency groups. And like I said, I've really liked it, and we've really seen some really great things with their scores. So hopefully this helps you too. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.